We were talking about equity, private equity, public equity, long-term liabilities, loans, and at the end of the day, we realized that all these things are only necessary to understand because at least we need funding to operate and survive. So somehow we have to collect the liabilities and equities in the balance sheet to finance our assets. So that one is obviously crucial. Also, we need data for weighted average cost of capital. So we have to understand what is the price of equity and the long-term liabilities. But also we know that the interest rate risk will generate problems and issues for us. This is what we will explore tomorrow at the seminar. And now we have one last thing to account for, and this is financial lease. And this is quite my favorite topic, or one of my favorite topics. And on the other hand, somehow it's underrepresented in the literature. So the Jeff Madura book, which is the baseline book for the entire course, it was completely missing the whole fact that majority of the industry, doesn't matter which industry, but majority of the firms are using or trying to use financial lease contracts to finance some of their assets. So before we are starting this, it's much better if we have some kind of a graphical representation. So this way. So if you are considering that, okay, we have a company, so we have assets, we have liabilities and equities, and there is this beautiful asset here. So let's call it blue. How can we get this? So the easiest way to put it into our balance sheet, that okay, the same size was collected with equity. So let's say that this is. And then obviously the blue part was cash originally because we collected the funds from the owners of the company. And after that, all this cash was converted to become asset. Nice. We can do the same thing. So if we are not just using equity-based financing, but also we can do the same thing with the loan. But after that, obviously, there will be interest payments. So eventually in the balance or profit and loss statement, we will have interest payments. And sooner or later, we have to renew this debt. Or we have to sell the asset to repay back the loan, but that would be quite stupid. What is the problem with this one? So the key problem is that maybe the physical lifespan of this asset can be way too long. I know usually the problem is that assets are dying or breaking earlier, but it can be also a death trap for the company, for profitability of the company, if the asset operates in a reliable manner for decades, but this will conserve the corporate operations at a specific technological level. So the problem is that, okay, we have the asset, so it will generate some kind of revenues, but also it will have expenditures. It will have, these expenditures will be wage related, so how many people should we employ? Also raw materials, maintenance needs, and so on. So my favorite example is always locomotives. So if you are operating a freight railway company or even passenger one, the problem is that we can buy cheap locomotives on the market, second-hand locomotives. So for 1 million euros, you can get a diesel engine from the 70s, even with they are changing the engine within it, so you can get a new diesel engine inside. There is even a Latvian company which purchased this former Soviet locomotives, and with CAT or other, what is the other one? So they are changing the engines within it and all the electric components. So at the end of the day, you can get something with a huge discount on the market, which is completely refurbished. But still, the problem is that the expenditures are a bit lower, but still you need daily maintenance checks. And this can be a huge problem. So if you are buying or somehow acquiring a Siemens Vectron or now it's not Bombardier, it's Alstom trucks engine, they are obviously or locomotive more expensive. So it's before COVID it was around 3 million euros. Nowadays it's closer to 4 or 5 million. It depends on the features. But in this case, you need only not this daily maintenance checks. You just have to check it once in a week. Or also in many cases now, you don't need physical checks because the telemetry is sent to your computer or to your maintenance crew through the internet. So many locomotive manufacturers now build in this Internet of Things components into their products, because in this case, so originally the problem was that until you had no idea what is happening in real life within the locomotive, car, airplane, doesn't matter, so with these high value assets, then you had to tear down the whole vehicle after operating several hours. So there was always this operational hours, which determined that, okay, now we need category A, B, C, D checks in case of airplanes. So not just flight hours, but also the number of landings, because in this case, depressurization and pressurization cycles, and also landing and takeoff cycles, which have this dynamic impact on the structure itself. And also, engines must be used at 100% torque or capacities when you are taking off or when you are landing also. They are much more dynamically used, while during flight, so when we are reaching flight levels, then usually they are tuning it down. So that was the custom, that after several operational hour or mileage, the whole vehicle should go to the maintenance check, and in this case they are taking out all the main components, checking all the rivets and other key points where they can fail. And even if the component is completely operational, but you know that with some probability some of them will fail eventually, so in this case you have to take it out. And it means that sometimes, according to conservative measurements, you can assume that 1/4 or 1/3 of your fleet will be under some kind of a maintenance check. So that's why it can be highly valuable if you can say that, okay, we can collect telemetry data real time, and then we can see that which components are close to the end of their life and which are not. So right now, this is the new big thing in logistics sector during the last 5 years. So the Internet of Things is much more like an industrial feature, not this commercial or customer thing, what we can expect. But still, so this expenditure of maintenance and wages will be logged in. So how many people do we need to operate this, and what kind of payment? Also, if you are thinking about airliners, in the 50s and in the 60s, still you needed someone who was the flight engineer. Nowadays, we don't need them because the computer does this since the 70s and especially the 80s. Also similar thing happened in the railway infrastructure. So in the past, okay, in steam engines, you needed at least 3 people to operate a steam engine. And nowadays, we can see that, okay, one driver is completely enough to operate a train. Also, still the problem is that railway operations are somehow, at some parts, they are high-tech, some parts absolutely low-tech. So still there is a huge need for manpower, for putting trains together, to organizing them, to check the brakes. So right now European Union tries to develop a uniform structure when you can connect carriages together automatically and do the checks for the brakes. So companies like Knorr-Bremse and other component manufacturers are trying to solve this nowadays. Anyway, as an economist, so these are engineering problems, but our problem is that as the asset becomes older and older, maintenance will be more expensive. Maybe we don't have any kind of spare components anymore because factories are saying that, oh, we don't want to manufacture this anymore, and also second-hand so second-hand manufacturers are also removing themselves from the market, or nobody would like to provide these components. This is when cannibalization can start, so you can take out key components from other vehicles and start to half your fleet, so usually in this case half the fleet is stopping, and then you are just taking out components from them. So at the end of the day, even if we can reliably generate revenues with older assets, the problem is that in the expenditure side and in the reliability side, we will be locked into higher expenditures. So that's why it would be much better to say that, okay, let's use new assets. So that was the owning. Strategy. So we can say that, okay, we can rent in the asset. In this case, the problem is that no, we don't have this asset in our balance sheet. So this is not here. But in this case also we don't need any kind of funding, so it can be also beneficial because until we are just renting something, we don't have to collect any kind of a capital. Just in this case, our expenditures will be higher because of this. But the problem is that if we are owning something, we have depreciation, which removes some of our cash revenues from taxation. So we can save some money. From taxation, if we are renting these things, then no, it's we have only wages and also rental fee. So this is not that great. So if we have long-term assets, then we have a third option, and this is lease, financial lease. I think that with the new or the current version of the IFRS standards now, finally we have only financial lease, because in the past we had also operational lease, which was practically lending, but now they cleaned up the definitions finally, and now lease means lease finally. But even in Hungarian literature, sometimes they are completely misleading people, that they are saying that, oh, this company was renting this asset, and then you are checking the contract. No, it was financial lease. So yeah, you have to be always careful what you are reading here and there. But financial lease is really good because in this case, yeah, we don't need equity. So there is the lease on the liability side. But obviously we need another company. So this will be the leasing firm who will buy this asset for us. Obviously, in this case, they have to take up, or let's assume that they are issuing a bond for that one. And after that, once they acquire this asset for us, then they are giving it to the company. So, key feature that this contract should be longer than 1 year. So if it's shorter than 1 year, then it will be rent. In accounting and otherwise as well. So usually the contract is around 3 years at least. So when I was asking around for locomotive lease contracts, especially for this class, or eventually, it was always that what I was able to get back from different European lease companies, that 3 years are the appropriate lease contracts. If you would like to lease military fighter jets from Saab to get a Gripen jet fighter, at least if you are checking the Hungarian or Czech lease contracts, I don't know in what happened in case of Thailand. I never checked that, how they are operating their own fleet. But these two countries are always making lease contracts for 5 years or 10 years. And in this case, in the lease specification, they are listing that, okay, we need this amount of, so the number of vehicles, the number of features, and also mileage, or, okay, in the case of airplanes, flight hours, the limit for flight hours, and after that you can add further services. But the net lease is only about the asset. We can extend it, so if you have additional services, then this will be a full service lease. So this is just the net lease when we are just focusing on the asset. For the leasing company, it's less risky if they are providing additional services, because in this case they can provide software updates. So they can also provide maintenance, corrective maintenance, preventive maintenance. So the asset will be much more reliable, and also it keeps its value until the contract expires, because once the contract expires, then you have to give back the asset, or in many cases the contract says that you can buy the asset at a residual value. In the IFRS it's not defined. In the US GAAP it's about, or the upper limit is 25% of the value, market value of the asset, where they limited the residual value, but usually you don't want to buy this. So in many cases they are just giving back the asset and it goes to auction, if it's a car. So in case of cars or fleets of cars or the small trucks, usually the limit is 100,000 kilometers, and after that they are just giving it back to the leasing company, because at that point some of them can be sold for spare parts, and some of the remaining fleet can be sold at the second-hand market for retail customers, and you don't want to operate them anymore. So especially nowadays when lifespans in the car business is around 300,000 kilometers if you are lucky. But yeah, so we can see that they are more reliable until 100,000. In case of locomotive leasing, it was quite surprising that there was no option to buy them at the residual value. Mostly they are just taking it back, and this option is not part of the contract. In the jet fighter case, we started to do these lease contracts in the early 2000s, and they arrived in the mid 2000s, and now in the third contract, both the Czechs and the Hungarian government has now the option that, okay, once the contract expires in the 2030s, now we can buy this jet fighter, which will be completely outdated at that time, so hopefully we don't buy this. The Czechs already announced that they will let this expire, and after that they are buying F-35s from Lockheed Martin. So otherwise, net lease is, full service lease contracts are really good, especially when this asset should be operated by state-owned enterprises. So I remember when the Hungarian government got MiG jet fighters from Russia, because the Soviet Union had a huge public debt towards the Hungarian government in the early 90s. So to break it down, they were delivering jet fighters and also some diesel multiple units for passenger transportation in the railways. And the problem was that after the spare parts were not provided in many cases, also flight hours were absolutely limited. So in 2006, there were within 10 years, only 2 of them were operational in the case of jet fighters from a fleet of 20. So, and even after, in 2012, so in the mid-2010s, even they tried to sell it on auction as scrap metal, and nobody wanted to buy them. So that's why it was really interesting to have this scandal several months ago, when people realized that some parts are missing from Kecskemét Air Base, where they are just kept on under the sky, so they just put the vehicles into... I can't say they conserve them down, because they've just throw them into some concrete pads, and after that they left it there. But now they realize that things are missing from here, from there. Yeah. But also similar thing happened with the locomotive engines. Just in this case, only half of the 40 vehicles are stopping in Szentes railway yard because of no spare parts. So this is always a risk in the case of owning an asset. In the case of financial lease, obviously this will be more expensive, but at least you will always get the necessary features and services. And also in many cases, not just this maintenance is provided, but also training for the crew. And also sometimes you can get even the crew. So this is the wet lease. So crew is added. So this is what is happening with Lauda Air. So Lauda Air has this relatively small Airbus 320s, and they were acquired by Ryanair several years ago. And in practice, you are buying the tickets from Ryanair, but sometimes you can see that not Ryanair painted aircrafts are arriving to the airport, but Lauda Air. And in practice, Lauda Air provides their services to the parent company as a wet lease contract. So they are providing the pilots, providing the stewardess, providing the plane, obviously, and after that they get their revenues on this basis. So in this case, Ryanair was able to increase their fleet way faster, and that's why financial lease can be really useful to deal with fluctuating demand. So the problem is that if we have business cycles, if we are owning a fleet of assets, we have to operate them somehow. So doesn't matter if we are using them or not, still we have to pay for the interest, or we have to maintain the equity even if they are not generating any revenues because we are in a problem because there is no demand for our services, or half our fleet has been stopped because of business cycle problems. In the case of renting, we can say that, oh, I don't want to rent this asset, so it can be flexible. Absolutely. In case of financial lease, since after 3 years or the desired mileage, we can give back the asset. Usually the case is that in railway logistics, half of the fleet is owned by, for example, by DB Cargo, Deutsche Bahn Cargo, which is quite a market leader in this region, and the other half of the fleet is operated through a lease contract. Because in this case, if you can see that demand is decreasing, then you can just get rid of the expiring contracts. Or if you can see that demand is increasing, then you can just make new lease contracts, and in this case you have way more flexibility. So that one is flexible and that one is rigid completely. In the case of airliners, what they are doing is that if they need new planes, that they are buying the airplane directly from the manufacturer, from Boeing or from Airbus, but after that they are selling it to a lease company, and after that they are leasing it back. So lease back is when you have the asset, but you need some liquidity, so you are selling it to a leasing company, and after that you are just paying the lease payments. And it can be also really useful because in this case you can cut also maintenance costs, so you don't need maintenance crew anymore, only maybe for daily operations, but nothing else. So you can also maybe sell the maintenance building and all the equipment, so you can also raise some revenues this way. So this can be also desperate measurement from a company which has big size of assets or lot of assets, but issues with their cash flows, and it's cheaper than just taking up a bank loan or increasing the debt further when you are already indebted. So this can be a desperate measure. We have this leaseback contract, but in the airline business, this is absolutely the usual case when you don't want to be logged into this airplane. So we know that after 10 years, still you can maintain it for decades, but after 10 years, a new winglet is coming out, which can these things on the side of the wings, which can cut 5 to 10%. It depends on the manufacturer and the type, but it can cut at least 5% of the fuel consumption. Or a new engine can come out, which can also cut 10% of the fuel consumption. So you don't want to operate older vehicles. Usually the food chain is that for the first 10 to 15 years, airplanes are operated by passenger airliners, and after that they are going for charter airliners where the margin is a bit bigger, because for charter airliners the demand is coming from tourism agencies, and after that they are converted for cargo operations, so they are putting a nice big door on the side, and after that they will end their lifespan as a cargo freight airliner later on. Nowadays we can see also that cargo airlines are purchasing new airplanes, but in the past that was just always the dropping down this downward feature was the primary way how assets were moving within the industry. So, in the case of lease, we can see that this can be highly beneficial, but the question is always that how can we price them? One last thing. Obviously, we have the asset, and this is long term, because it's longer than 1 year. So what we have is the juicy depreciation. We like this one. So we have the depreciation because now it's in our books, even if it's not completely owned by us. Because if we are not paying the lease, then the asset will have to be given back immediately. So we had this terrible state-owned enterprise called Malev. It was a passenger airline. Some people like this a lot. As a taxpayer, I hated it because it was always generating minus or losses for taxpayers. It had to be always bailed out. And politicians always put their relatives into this company to improve its profitability downwards. So when it defaulted in 2008 or 9, I was not so sad at that point. And in this case, you were able to see that all the airplanes immediately started to fly towards Ireland, where the leasing company originated and operated there. And after that, unfortunately, most of these airplanes were just sold as spare parts, so they were just taking out and cannibalizing them, which also tells a lot about. So the fleet was completely heterogeneous. They were using just 1 or 2 types for different routes, so it was a hot mess compared to the rest of the industry. So, because if a company defaults in the case of a bank loan or a bond, then resolve this takes months, or if you are unlucky, years. In case of financial lease, if you are not paying, then immediately it's taken back, so it's less risky for the leasing company compared to a bank. Even if the asset is the collateral behind the loan, still you have to wait for months for the closure of the company, and after that you can get maybe the collateral asset. But the problem is that many banks, even in Hungary, get some half-finished hotels and other things after the 2008 financial crisis. And as a bank, you can be a happy owner of this concrete half-finished building or structure, but it will not generate you revenues. So this is always a problem. That's why we can see only financial lease in the market of assets, which has strong and reliable second-hand market. So that's why it's cars, it's trucks, locomotives, or airplanes, or MRI machines. So these are the 6 main asset categories where we can see financial lease. In case of land, lease is a bit different because, okay, that one is a long-term lease because we are using the same term, but that one is different. So the land lease and financial lease, they are not the same things. So yeah, I don't want to talk about land lease because this depends on the country. Usually they are saying that, okay, as a company, I would like to lease only the land for several decades because in this case, I'm not that committed towards the maintenance. And sometimes you are not able to buy it. So it's also a huge limitation. Yeah. Okay. Tax benefits because of depreciation. And let's check that did I forget something? Nothing. So what is usually missing from the books is how to price the lease contract, because unfortunately 99% of the literature is only about that, oh, lease is really good, it's beneficial, so all the things that I was talking about and definitions, but after that they are forgetting to add anything how to price them. So somehow this equation landed on my desk from a now defaulted leasing company. So we acquired this somehow in a mysterious way, and now we can see how can we do this. So first of all, okay, there is the asset price. So what is the market value? So let's say we would like to have a locomotive, and in this case, the value is 4 million euros. Then we have the residual value. As I mentioned it already, in IFRS, it's not defined. In the US GAAP, it should be at least at 25%. So we can assume that it's around 25%, at least. But also by law, it's required to have some kind of a discounting value for this lease fee, and also according to US GAAP, it should be at least only 90% of the asset price should be accounted. I don't know why it was written in the text. So yeah, okay. Then the lease fee, if we are paying the same amount of lease fee during the lifespan of the entire lifespan of the asset, then it's behaving like an annuity. So, and in this case, to calculate the value of an annuity, we have to divide by this discount factor, which is defined by the length of the contract, or in practice, the usual or useful lifespan of the asset. So this is the time t, and also we have the interest rate. And this is the funny part, because even if we can take this out from US GAAP and IFRS, we have no idea how this is calculated. But due to some reasons, I was able to acquire this one. So we can see that this interest rate is coming from different components. So first of all, there is the leasing company's interest rate. So as I mentioned it already, still the leasing company have to buy this asset at the first step or zero step, so they can take up a long-term loan, they can issue a bond issuance is easier, especially if, so these leasing companies are, usually they are owned by a bank, or they are a specialized bank already. And for banking operations, bond issuance is easier, always. So, so this is their interest rate. And after that, there is the interest premium 1, which depends on the maturity of the asset, the down payments. In this case, we have no idea how to estimate this, unfortunately. So for our purposes at the seminar, we will ignore this one because there were no further equations. I was not able to acquire anything more. Then commission for the leasing company. Yeah, they have to live from something, so obviously they need some profit. And then interest premium 3 represents the partner risk and the volatility of the asset price. Volatility. Okay, so only one volatility for the asset price, and this one is excessive. And in the case of partner risk component, we can do it because we know from at least at industrial level, but banks are doing the same thing. So there are these nice tables that in the specific industry, what is the usual percentage of companies to go default. So this is the default rate. And also, if they are going to default, then how long does it happen? So time to default is also estimated. And also due to Basel III regulation, or also already Basel II regulation, we have to multiply it by 2. So yeah, so this is the interest premium 3. For asset volatility, I have no idea. But even if you are just using the equation like this one, without, so if you are ignoring the asset price volatility, because the problem is that most of these assets are not publicly traded. So we can see only prospectus prices, and obviously if you are ordering in higher numbers, then this price can drop. Second-hand markets are absolutely non-transparent, so we can say that, okay, there is asset price volatility, but who cares, because it's not transparent. We don't have any kind of data. Maybe if we are operating in this specific industry, we have some data, but not here at the university. It would be a bit expensive if I would just create a leasing company just to acquire such knowledge for this class. And also, we have the additional services, which can be calculated again, because if we know that maintenance fee is already paid by the company for such an asset, after that we can still trace it back and convert it to some kind of a percentage. So yeah, but at least we have the R0 and we have the R3 for these calculations, and after that we can check that is this working or not. Okay, for default rates from Standard & Poor's, there is this annual global corporate default rating transition study, which is published in each year. So hopefully we have no internet. Why? It's supposed to be the internet here. Oh, you were off. Okay. Sorry for that. Yes. Now you can see it. Good. Luckily, this website always publishes this report, and if you are interested in any industries, this S&P report can be really useful because it describes many default cases which happened during the last year. So it's not just providing data for us this way, but also provides insights into many different industries. And also it defines that, okay, global corporate default summary. So what was the usual default numbers, and also yeah, this is important. So if these defaults happen, then what was the loss at the end of the day, or at least the depth of the defaulting companies, because you can recover most of it if you are lucky, but still we can see that. For example, the 2008 and 9 crisis was quite affected by the defaults. And for example, COVID, it was also quite nice. But also since then we can see that due to the higher interest rates and also due to that companies were absolutely relying on low interest loans, and they got used to it since 2014 when ECB and all the key central banks cut down interest to the zero, then they became way too comfortable to deal with such a situation. So I know some people whose research interest is completely about zombie firms. So zombie firm is which has assets, operates, still gets some funding, but otherwise they have negative equity. So you can see that somehow this company still operates, but it will be doomed eventually. So without any consolidation, in case of debt, in case of their assets, or without closure because they are utterly useless. So they are just creating a burden for the economy. And this can be also a really interesting subject to doing analysis. Just, yeah, that's not mine. But also we can see different industries, and also we can see that which industries were affected more by the recent years. So health, leisure, telecommunication. How they can go to default in this case? Okay, leisure, we know that, okay, they have a historically high, not the highest default rates. Usually in the leisure business, survivability is 1 year or 2 years, and after that they are defaulting. But if you are surviving, then you can prosper happily. But let's see. This is also really useful, because we can see that AAA or so rating matters, because mostly companies, even these turbulent periods, until they are listed as A, then they are reliable. So 0% of them defaulted since... Okay, we were able to see some outliers here in 2008 and 9, but only 0.22% or 38% defaulted at this category. So we can say that, yeah, they are quite safe. And after that, if we are going towards double B categories, which are more riskier, then we can see stuff. And after that, triple C, which is the last one before defaulting, then we can see a lot of nasty things. Yeah, so but what is interesting for us will be located downstairs, and also largest global rated defaulters per year. So this is the list where you don't want to find your company. So Enron, WorldCom, and all the accounting scandals. Parmalat. So yeah, so all three of them were falsifying their reports. Happily, Lehman Brothers, the keystone of the financial industry, and I never heard about them. Oh, Evergrande, we heard about them. So yeah, when you are trying to grow so fast and so aggressively with so small margins, and you are just collecting funds from the next projects, in the retail business, this is always the problem, that sooner or later there will be a limit for growth. So you cannot put concrete everywhere. And that was the end of Evergrande and in many other real estate developers also in the past. So Lumen Technologies, I have no idea about them. So sooner or later, if you are scrolling down enough, then we start to see data about industries. Right now they are just trying to highlight the relevance of different scoring, but do we have Evergrande here as well? No? Yes, so this is what I was looking for. So this is the global corporate default rates by industry. And in the lecture notes, we find the same thing. So just this is a long time ago. If you are checking the numbers here, we can see that, in the aerospace, automotive, capital goods, metal. So all the manufacturing industry where they are making complex products from metal, we can see that, yeah, this percentage is a bit higher. So let's compare it. So practically doubled since COVID. And even if we are comparing it to the weighted average, it's higher. So we can see that high interest rates, inflation made its tolls. But still, the maximum level was 9%. So compared to this one, okay, the industry is still happy. If we are checking transportation, which had to be affected way more by high inflation and also stagnation, at least in demand, or even the demand is shrinking in the logistics sectors during the last 2 years in Europe. We can see that, it's 3.6%. What was the reality before? Yeah, it increased. So we can see that it's not doubled, it's multiplied. And utilities. So utilities are usually defensive industries, so people need them, and it's really hard to default. Obviously, energy prices shocks had to affect them as well. Yeah, that was 0. It's cute. Okay, but otherwise it's 0.3. And it's behaving like this. How did they do this? Healthcare and chemicals. Oh, in the insurance business. So insurance companies were always struggling when the interest rates were 0, because as an insurance company, you have to collect your revenues as your liabilities, and then you have to invest them into bonds. So in many cases, law says that you are allowed only to buy government bonds or only high quality corporate bonds, or in some countries municipality bonds and regional government bonds. But there is a short list of acceptable assets, and if they are not providing much revenues for you, then it's really hard to maintain your profitability. So insurance companies, also financial institutions, should be in much better shape, or at least similar levels. Yeah. Insurance 0.12. Yeah, it's 0. So they are happy right now, or at least operational. And let's see energy. Yeah, energy and natural resources. They should be blooming. Yes, they are. So we can see that now we can use this corporate default rates. So again, here we have to put this percentage in, and after that this will be good enough. And after that, the time, yeah, average time to default. So when they are, let's assume that they were rated as AAA companies, and after that, how many years was passing until they were defaulting. So 3.9 is the average ratio in the automotive aerospace industry, and it was 3.7, so this remained the same. Yeah, so this can be really useful. Also, it has a regional breakdown, so how default rates are changing from region to region, because it can be also really useful to see that which crises were US specific, which crises were European specific, or emerging and frontier markets. How they react on all of these things. And also we have an example. So as I mentioned, leasing market is quite oligopolistic. So there is only a small set of companies which are providing services, and in many cases the leasing companies are the subsidiaries of the manufacturer. So for example, Saab has its own leasing company which then provides financing for the jet fighters. Also Boeing and Airbus has their own leasing companies to provide their planes for their clients. Or in the case of logistics, locomotives, MRCA, which is a Japanese company, is one relevant, or there was Dislotok, LLT or LTT, one of them. LTA is another leasing company. So there are less than 10 relevant companies on this field. Obviously, in case of cars, this is way easier. So and they are fast-moving goods, at least compared to the locomotive. So I was able to get some real pricing, and it will be really useful because in this case we can calibrate our own equation model. So first of all, okay, this is a railway business related feature. So homologization was required for the specific countries because I needed this. And yeah, so it says that, okay, it's Austria. We can see here the lease term, so it's for 3 years, and also mileage. And obviously, if I would like to use this for longer mileage, then the lease fee will increase, or if I'm using it for smaller mileage, then it will decrease. Originally, I wanted to have an asset for 1 million kilometers per year. They were saying that, nope, you can do this. So you have to lease at least 5 locomotives to do that. Otherwise, you don't. And also in the car, unfortunately in Hungary, as a retail client, you cannot have a lease contract for cars. And I don't know why. It's we have a really good friend in Germany. He's an engineer there. Originally came from Hungary. And he had a really good Volvo. He liked this car, but eventually he had to sell it. And he wanted to check, come on, it's 2025, so he acquired a Tesla. But the biggest problem with electric cars is the reliability of batteries. So we know that batteries can be absolutely reliable for 8 years. But after 8 years, the probability of a battery pack change will increase dramatically, and also these cars depreciate a lot. You don't want to own them because their second-hand value drops really fast and in a really steep manner because they're also sold at way higher prices than they're supposed to be. Just right now, everybody builds up their manufacturing capacity, so obviously they have to request higher prices than the actual expenditures are suggesting it. So steep depreciation and also the ticking time bomb of battery pack changes. But on the other hand, these assets or these cars are simple like a vacuum cleaner. So you have an electric motor inside and some batteries, and if they are not making any mistakes during manufacturing, otherwise it's really hard to break them. So it's not like fossil fuel cars where you have a really, really overcomplicated engine with some turbo on it, with some transmission shaft, and now they are using really high pressures, really high temperatures through the injector. So nowadays you don't have an engine for 1 million kilometers anymore, unfortunately. Or you are really happy if you can use this engine without any maintenance for longer than 100,000 kilometers. So in this case, for him it was way easier, and in this case, a Tesla was quite a simple solution. Okay, he could lease a Polestar, but he chose Tesla, and because in this case he can get the car for 4 years. Obviously, the mileage is limited, but sometimes he drives home to Hungary, but you don't want to drive home to Hungary so much for 11 hours, 12 hours. You don't want to do this. That's why we have planes. So by plane, you have to fly an hour or maybe 1.5 hours, and that's all. So it's completely unreasonable, but he prefers to drive sometimes. So it's really easy to stay within the mileage. And after that, after 4 years, he can give back the car. He don't want to buy this. He can buy a new one. So lease has its actual benefits. In this case, obviously the friends are telling him that, okay, but in this case you are not owning the car, but it's still adding or factoring in all the maintenance fees, all the spare parts, And also it's really expensive to maintain anything in Germany, so service fees are really high. So after some points, he realized that no, it's not worth to own this car because it doesn't matter. Obviously, as a private citizen, you don't have the benefits of depreciation, so in this case, you cannot utilize this, but otherwise this can be useful. Okay, so let's go back to our original contract offer or sample contract. We can see here preventive maintenance, corrective maintenance, main overhaul and revisions, and insurance. So everything is added. Obviously, if you are breaking it, you cannot get a new one. Several years ago, hopefully I can find pictures. Okay, several years ago. It was many years ago. No. Yes. So, this is the whole picture. Come on, guys. Yeah. So, a decade ago, this 1 month old Vectron locomotive with the value of 3 to 4 million euros was stopped at Budapest at the train station, and then the driver went to for his job, and obviously the locomotive waited until he left several meters away, and after that slowly started to roll out from the train station because the brakes were not on. And the problem was that eventually it was derailed before reaching the Danube River, and after that it was salvaged, so they were able to repair this and had not to be scrapped. But the problem was that, is this a manufacturing error? Is this a maintenance error, or was this the error of the driver? Because if it was a pilot error, then all these burdens of repairs and other costs will have to be covered by the company who leases this. But since it was a full service lease contract, if it's a manufacturing error, if it's a maintenance error, then the leasing company will cover the expenditures. And if it's a manufacturing error, then obviously it goes back to Siemens and they can do whatever they want and they have to give a new one. And I was able to meet one of the guys who was responsible for the investigation. We were canoeing together several years ago, and also you can find the report on the internet as well because they are public. What happened that some small steel fragments, so some contamination remained in the valve, which was regulating the braking system, and the train was thinking that it's already braked, so it's stopped and it's not able to move anywhere, but it was a sensor error. So it was a manufacturing error at the end of the day. So both the leasing company and the company which was utilizing it was happy because in this case it was Siemens problem, so they had to deal with it and they had to provide a new asset to the company who was trying to utilize it. So that's why spare locomotive is an issue. And there was the other case when maybe also we can find illustration. That was a pilot error. Yes. Oh, it was also, it was longer than a decade ago. So this is not the usual shape of a Gripen jet fighter. And was that the two-seated? Yeah, it just an asset with a value of a lot of billion forints. But this is the two-seated or the one-seated? Yeah, so okay, it was taking a lot of long time. So eventually, so one of the cases, I don't know which one was that, but I think that this is because the one-seated, when it was crashed, then it was only sliding on the belly, and it was easily repairable, but this one is, yeah, sorry? No, they were able to catapult. So in all cases, nobody died. But what happened here, it was a piloting error. So they were flying to Czechia for a training purpose, and they were misusing the brakes. We can see that, yeah, they were misusing it absolutely, because this is the end of the...
They were going.
They were landing, and after landing, they did some terrible decisions. So they were able to catapult and survive, but in this case, Hungarian taxpayers had to cover the repair. I think it was manufactured newly. From this, you cannot salvage. Okay, maybe engines survived. Or the engine, sorry, it's a single engine airplane. So in this case, that's why it's really peculiar situation when assets funded by lease, they are breaking, because in this case, we are really strict about this. Also, we can see here the list of many different things. Oh, spare and wearing parts, and also stocking of spare parts. So within a day, you have access. Wheels are provided, and also software updates, documentation, operational support. Yeah, so that's why lease, it's a really good opportunity to finance something if you need flexibility, if you would like to maintain the most up-to-date assets, if you don't want to take up loans, and also somewhere the lecture notes are suggesting that also it's way faster to negotiate through a lease contract. So with the bank, even for me, so when I was buying my flat, I put down more money than the bank. So they were not in a risky situation, and we did the contract in January, and they require 3 months to accept the loan, which was absolutely a really simple case. So here's the flat, money, and so on. And it was a fixed interest contract, so it was just one spreadsheet that, okay, it's there, and you have to sign it here, and somehow it was taking 3 months. So we can imagine how long GER can take for a bank to react on any other more complex business plans or projects to provide funding. In the case of a lease contract, you can get the asset within 2 months, 1 month. It depends on the second-hand market, or how fast the manufacturer can provide this asset, or what is the case, because in many cases, leasing companies already have some assets in their hand, and they don't have to wait for the manufacturer to manufacture this product. But otherwise, this is the story of lease contracts. So there is some literature, and the problem is that I checked more, so not just these two, but they're always repeating the same stuff. So this is the main problem, that everybody defines or provides the definitions, and nobody provides the actual leasing way for it. So I was digging up so many data. I stopped it maybe 4 years ago, so maybe I should sweep the internet again. Maybe I can find something new about lease pricing, maybe some transparency here and there, but right now this is the best what we can get. But this one is reliable because we were testing it. Okay, so that was all.